Morning guys, this is Mr. Ndabezita once again, and this time, wonderful people, I thought to myself, let us try to look at a shallow copy, and in another tutorial we will look at the deep copy. So how can we obtain a shallow copy of an object, or maybe of a variable that is inside of a class? So this is exactly what we will be looking at. So we want to perform a shallow copy using the system.object.memberwise clone protected method. So there is a protected method in the system.object.memberwise clone, and this protected method using the getCopy method will allow us, or will help us, to have a memberwise clone of a particular field that we have. So I think it is best to explain this with a code, but what I want us to do is to create a class where we can have this member of interest that we want to create a memberwise clone of. So let me have a class, and I'm going to call this class a cloner. So this is a class that will perform, or that will be able to clone for us whatever that we are interested on. So in this class, I think it is very important. For example, inside of this cloner, let us have something. I think it is very important that we try to have something inside there. But before we can do that, okay, let's have a cloner, and let's say this cloner, we have a member there that is public, and it will be of type int, and we call this the value. So a cloner has a value, and as you can see that the value is not yet assigned a number. And then let us have a constructor, and let's have inside of this class a constructor that accepts an argument of type int, and I'm going to call this a new value. So this is a value that one will have when you instantiate this cloner. So I'm going to use the fat arrow there. Let me just get rid of this, and then what am I going to say there? I'm going to say the value will be equals to the new value that will be passed in. So in other words, we are saying when you instantiate a cloner, you will have to pass in a parameter of type int there, and then that parameter that you pass will be assigned to the value. So value, when you instantiate a cloner, will have a value that you have passed there. I think it is worthy of noting that. And remember, this is our class which we call the cloner. It will be the one that invokes the memberwise clone method that creates a shallow copy for us. So it is very, very important. Remember what we said in here. Let me just have a reading once again. We are trying to perform a shallow copy with the system.object.memberwise clone protected method by using a method like the getCopy. So this getCopy is just a method that you can have. You can use a different name for that. For instance, that is exactly what we will do. So I will say public. So where does this memberwise clone comes from? It comes from system.object.memberwise clone. So I'm going to say public object, then I am going to call this method get my copy. Remember, it is a method equals or greater and then it will return a member-wise clone. Very, very important. So a member-wise clone, it is a protected method that accepts no argument, and then what it does, it is to return that member-wise clone that we have. Very, very important. So when you invoke the get my copy method, what it does, it returns a member-wise clone. But I think we will see how exactly that works when we are done in here. So let us go and have a class again, the class that we will call content. And this content class that we have, it will have a field that will be public. It will be of type int, and it will be called a value as well. And then that's all what we have inside there. And then secondly, what we will do in there, so one thing worthy of noting, let's not start first with a cloner, because the cloner has to clone what is inside of content. So this is where everything begins. We have a class that contains one field of type int, and then the cloner has, this is very, very important. So inside of a cloner, let's not have this public int, because now we are creating a redundancy now. This will be a highly problematic. So the cloner, and I want you to listen to this very, very carefully. Let me come inside of a cloner and use containment or aggregation. Let a cloner contain a class content so that we can access that value that is inside of content. Please, let's just correct that. So this is where everything starts. Everything starts first inside of a class content, and then we are having an int there that we call a value, and then we are going inside of a cloner class, and then we want to have access to the value that is inside of content. So how do I do that? I'm going to say public content, which is a class, and I'm going to call this my content, and this is equals to new content. Very good. Now let's go inside of content. Inside of content, I have a default constructor, and where is it? There it is. A default constructor that accepts no argument. So this will be created for us because we did not create it inside of content. Right, and then what I'm going to say when I am inside there, which is something very, very important. So secondly, I am having a constructor cloner, and then this constructor cloner, what it does, it accepts an argument of type int, and then what am I going to say? I'm going to say my content, because this value, it is inside of my content. So I'm saying public cloner. When you instantiate a cloner, you pass in a value. What will it do? It will go to my content, which is an instance of content dot value, and then it will take that value and it will store it inside of that object. Highly and highly important that we understand what is happening here. When you instantiate a cloner by passing in there an int, what it will do, it will take that value and it will store that value inside of your instance, my content dot value. So here we are accessing the value that is inside of my content. And then what are we doing there? We are using containment. A cloner contains a class called content, so that we may have access to that value there, so that when we instantiate a cloner by passing in a value there, that value will be stored inside of my content.value. So inside of your content, my content, which is this, the value in here will be a value that you pass in here when you instantiate a clone. I'm trying to explain this. I don't know whether you have understood that, but that is exactly what is happening there. And then secondly, what am I saying? I'm having a method which is called public, and it will be a method of type object, very important. And then when you hover over there, it says that it supports all classes in the .NET class hierarchy and provides a low-level service to derived classes. So we have a derived class that we will instantiate, and they all inherit from the object, which just supplies a low-level service for us. And then when I invoke this method, what it will do, it will perform a member-wise clone. And this is a protected method that only creates a shallow copy of a current object, and then it returns a shallow copy of that current object. So this is exactly what is happening there. So it does things on the background for you. You don't have to know the details of that. And then now we can go to the main. Let us see whether everything has been done correctly inside of the clone. Everything is fine. And then when we are on the main, the first thing that we are going to do, we are going to instantiate a cloner now, because it is the one that contains a content. So I'm going to say cloner. I'm going to say cloner, and I'm going to call this what shall we say, my source. Let me say my source equals a new cloner. But I know when I instantiate or create an instance of cloner, I need to pass in an int there. Let's say the value, for example, the value is 5. Now, let me go again and have a cloner that I will call my target. And I'm going to cast in here. I'm going to say cloner. Very good. I'm going to say cloner in there, and then I'm going to say my source dot, and when you press the dot there, we have a method get my copy there, and it is a method that, let me come here and say cloner, which is a class. Very good. So casting is highly necessary there. And then let us just have a right line, and then what do we want to say when we are there? I think we should just have something like my target dot my content dot value. Let's say that is equals to, I can come and say my target dot my content dot value. Right. And then what value do I have inside there? I must have a value of 5. I must have a value of 5. Why? Let's go to cloner. Because when you pass in a parameter of type int there. I'm taking that value and I'm going inside of my content class, and then I'm assigning that value to val. So that is why we are therefore saying that it will have a value of 5. Very important. So I'm saying my target dot my content that value, and that value will be the same value as the source, and that value will be 5. Very important that we understand the logic here. And then when that is done, what is it else that I want to do? Okay, let me go and say my source dot my content dot value. Let me change the value there and make it 2. Copy this and paste it in there. So what will my content that value contain? It will contain also 2, because remember, this is called by reference. What you did in the cloner in here, for every value you set for my content dot value, that value will be passed on to your target. That's exactly the condition that you have made in here. So when you instantiate a cloner, it will have the same value as your target in there. So when you say my source, remember, so when you say my source dot my content dot value, let's go to my source because it is inside of a cloner. Here we are in here. So whatever value that you pass in there in my content dot value, it will be passed into the cloner there. So they are equal. Highly and highly important. Whatever value that you pass on to my content dot value, that value will be also in the new value constructor in there. And then that same value, when you print it out here saying my target dot my content dot value, it will contain a value of 2. Why? Because my source is 2, and this is called by reference. You have created a condition in such a way that when you change my source, whatever that is inside of my source will also be inside of your target. This is exactly the condition that you have created. Now let us try and check whether this is true. Now let's check something. Right, so look what is happening. You instantiate a cloner my source with a value of 5, and then when you have a right line here, my target dot my content dot value, look at your target now, and here you have cast, because it is necessary that you do that. Why is it necessary? Let's go to the cloner. Here you are. You need to cast an object there, and this is exactly what you have done there. You cast in order to have access to the get copy method. You need to cast in order to have a get copy method. And then what do you cast there? An object. So this is exactly what we did there. Highly and highly necessary. We have created a condition in here that would force us that whenever we want to create to have a member wise clone, we need to cast there. And then what are we casting? We are casting using a cloner class, and then we are saying my source dot get copy there. So my source value is 5, and look at my target value there that is printed out. The value is also 5. I am changing here the value of my source dot my content dot value to 2 look at my target, the value is also 2. So this is called by reference. So whatever you change inside of my source will be changed in the target. Whatever you change in the target will change in my source. So this is how you can just create a shallow copy. It honestly has to do with one understanding, and we can do this with one field. We can do this with as many fields as you wish. So this is just something very simple, guys, that I wanted to share with you. I hope and I understand that we have understood that, and if we did, I will see you in the next tutorial.